Here is an explanation for the answer to final exam question number 92 in Alternative Energy Demystified 2nd edition. If you have the printed book, you'll find it on page 331. The question is stating a premise. Methane is generally safer than propane. That's the premise. As a heating fuel because, and then we're given 4 possible reasons, and then we're given the choice that indicates, well, no, this premise is actually not even true. Methane is not safer than propane. Well, in fact, the answer to this question is E. Propane is safer than methane, and the reason for that is that when stored, propane tends to be a liquid type of substance, whereas methane is a gas just about however you slice it, unless you try to liquefy it. That can be done, but it's extremely expensive and difficult. So propane is actually safer in general than methane. Methane is more energy dense than propane? No, definitely not. When propane is in its liquid state, it's got a lot more energy per unit volume than methane does under ordinary atmospheric conditions. Methane burns cooler than propane? Well, not really. As far as I know, they're about the same once they actually get to burning in a furnace. Methane is less explosive. Well, no, it's actually more explosive, especially when stored. D. Propane can freeze solid, but methane can't. Well, technically, I guess that's true. On the Earth, it is possible for propane to freeze. Well, I'm not really sure about that. Propane would freeze at a higher temperature than methane would. Methane ice is evidently found in some planetary bodies like Titan, the moon of Saturn, or liquefied methane is found there. But this would not in any case represent a safety issue. C is really the critical thing here. Methane is not less explosive than propane. It's actually more explosive. Well, let's look at a schematic diagram of a typical forced-air furnace that can burn either propane or methane or oil. This type of furnace has a combustion air intake, a combustion air exhaust, which are entirely independent from the circulation. Usually, in my furnace anyway, the combustion air intake and the combustion air exhaust are both outside. These are important considerations isolating this combustion system, this combustion circulation system and fan from the circulation system, so that in the event that there's a malfunction in the furnace and flue gases begin to come out of the combustion air intake, you don't want that combustion air intake in the house, because if flue gases back up and start to come out of there, you're going to get carbon monoxide in your house. In addition, there are other reasons to have the combustion circulation go entirely to and from the outside and be entirely independent. That also reduces the chance, by the way, of any kind of explosion occurring in the event that there's a gas leak, because the combustion system is isolated from the interior of the house. But in general, propane is a safer fuel to use than methane is, and oil is even safer yet in terms of how explosive it is. But any kind of combustible fuel, of course, can present a danger. I know that is true because a house not too far from me that had an oil heat furnace burned to the ground 3 or 4 years ago. And I believe that it had something to do with the furnace. I'm not really sure, but you've always got to make sure that you maintain any kind of furnace that uses combustible materials, or otherwise, for that matter, if you want to stay warm in the winter. But propane, again, propane is generally safer than methane as a fuel. So the premise of the question is in fact wrong, and the correct choice is therefore E.